Hello everyone. This is the 7th part of the story, Magical Journey in Harry Potter World. Chapter 25, Hogwarts Express once more. On September 1, 1991, Quinn decided to get to the train station early. He told his grandfather the day before and gave him the reason. The Potters are going to be there tomorrow, and I am sure that parents of the children are going to stay and crowd the platform. Plus, reporters are going to be there to click photos for their articles. I don't want to get in the middle of all that chaos and would prefer to get a compartment before it gets too crowded. So, can we go early, please? So, on the day, Quinn reached the platform early and got himself a compartment. When Quinn saw outside from his window and saw reporters standing around the platform waiting for the Potters to arrive. And as time passed, Quinn also saw parents of students not leaving and staying at the platform. Quinn sighed and thought, poor people, most of these people won't even get a look at the Potters. Then there would be the nervous non-magical parents. What would they think when they see the crowd of people and reporters? Quinn also thought about how some of the parents would ask about the Potters. He could imagine the horrified look on the parents' faces while listening about the war and Voldemort. Quinn was sure that Hogwarts faculty didn't share that information with the parents as it would be terrible publicity. One thing was for sure, some parents were going to have one hell of an experience, and that too just before sending their children off to a strange and unknown world. After a while, Quinn got bored and took out a book on healing magic from Egypt. And Quinn began reading a chapter on bones. It had all kinds of information on bones, the composition of different bones, herbs, and magical beast organs that facilitated bone healing, potions recipes for various bone anomalies, and healing charms that repaired bones. The information in the book impressed Quinn, so you don't need to use Skeelgrow for every bone injury. Now, where do I get people with broken bones? It was then that Quinn heard the crowd outside become noisy and made him look outside. The Potters are here, He shook his head and dove back into his book. 10 minutes later, Quinn heard a knock on his door that made him give a distracted glance to the door. There he saw 2 girls, one blonde and one brunette. Quinn sighed before gesturing them to enter. The brunette opened the door and asked, "Are you saving the seats for someone? Or, can we join you in here?" Quinn shook his head and gestured to the seats. "Please, enter. The seats are free. You are welcome to join me." Saying that, Quinn stood up from his place to help them with their luggage. He pulled his fake wand and clearly showed it to them. Following proper protocol, he asked, "I will be using my wand to get your luggage to the racks above if that is acceptable to you." It was the polite social norm to ask before using magic on other people or their belongings. The brunette smiled and nodded, while the straight-faced blonde stared at him for a while before giving a single slight nod to show that she permitted Quinn's help. Quinn pretended to follow the luggage with his fake wand even though he wasn't using pointing to direct the luggage. After he placed their luggage on the luggage racks, Quinn asked, "I haven't seen you two at Hogwarts. Are you two by any chance first years?" The brunette excitedly answered, "Yes. It is all so exciting. You must be a senior. Can you tell me about Hogwarts? Is it true that there is a giant squid at Hogwarts?" Quinn chuckled in reply, "Yes, there is a giant squid in Hogwarts, but it is quite difficult to see the squid. It doesn't emerge from the Great Lake for long periods." He paused before continuing, "By the way, my name is Quinn West. May I get your name?" "Oh. My name is Tracy Davis." "It is nice to meet you," answered the brunette with an ever-present smile on her face. Quinn smiled and held out his hand that Tracy took. Quinn turned her hand to kiss her knuckles, causing her to giggle. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Davis." Quinn usually shook hands as a greeting but changed greeting according to the person in front of him, but he switched it to this style seeing their attire. He could clearly see that they were from traditional, old-school British magical families. A traditional greeting was much appropriate for these two. Then the two turned to the straight-faced blonde, and Quinn thought, "No way is she who I think she is. But, blonde, straight-faced, no expressions, and she clearly is from a pureblood family. Friends with Tracy Davis, yep, she is the child of Fanon." The expressionless blonde critically stared at Quinn's outstretched hand and finally spoke her first words since entering the compartment, while gracefully allowing Quinn to hold her hand, "Daphne Greengrass." Quinn repeated the same action of kissing her knuckles. "Nice to meet you, Ms. Greengrass. He was once again met with silence, but Tracy chatted with him. "Which house are you from, and what year are you in, Quinn?" "And, can I call you Quinn?" babbled Tracy, full of energy. "I am from Ravenclaw, second year, and yes, you can call me Quinn," answered Quinn before asking, "You must be excited to get to Hogwarts. Have you thought about which house do you want to join?" Tracy shrugged in response, "I don't know. I am fine with any house." Quinn turned to Daphne Greengrass, expecting an answer, but she didn't say anything, and Tracy spoke, "Sorry about her. Daph is really shy. And to answer your question, she wants to be in Slytherin." The blonde Greengrass snapped her head towards her friend and glared, "I am not shy, don't speak nonsense." Tracy giggled at getting a response out of her friend. Suddenly, all three felt a jerk as the Hogwarts Express began moving. Quinn took out his pocket watch and looked at the time, only 10 minutes late. "I was expecting more delay. I was clearly expecting a 30-minute delay. The Potters really attracted a crowd, huh? I wonder which house would the boy who lived go to," spoke Tracy as she watched the crowd outside. To Quinn's massive surprise, it was Daphne Greengrass who answered the question. She scoffed, "The golden boy would definitely go to Gryffindor. To him, any other house is a lesser option." Quinn could hear the dripping condescending tone in her words and voice. "Oh my, from your words, I assume that you know Harry Potter?" Quinn asked, wishing to learn more about this connection. Daphne frowned at him. "Why are you a fan of him? Do you want me to introduce you to him?" She looked like she was going to say more, but Tracy interjected and answered, "She is friends with his sister, Ivy Potter." "I'm not Dash," she said heatedly, but then closed her eyes to calm down. Quinn seriously wanted to read Daphne Greengrass's mind, but he could see the telltale signs of occlumency in use. Her expressionless face was a clear sign of emotional aspect occlumency, and it wasn't far-fetched to assume that she had defense shields up. He didn't want to risk getting caught and decided to use legilimency at a later date when he was better prepared. But all was not finished. Quinn had gathered enough information to deduce Daphne Greengrass is at least acquaintance with Ivy Potter, so there might be a connection between the Potters and Greengrasses. From what grandfather has told me, the Greengrass family is firmly planted in the Grey faction, which means the connection is not political, which indicates a personal relationship. But of what kind? I doubt James Potter is friends with Jacob Greengrass, they are too different. What then? What prompted Daphne Greengrass and Ivy Potter to meet? Self-note, find more about this connection. Quinn also thought about Daphne's words about Harry Potter. She clearly doesn't like Harry Potter. Any other house than Gryffindor is a lesser choice were her words. Does that mean this Harry Potter thinks less of people in other houses? That is not good, is it? Oh Merlin, don't let him be like Gryffindor's Draco Malfoy. Quinn looked at Daphne, who had calmed down and spoke, "A snappy one, aren't you? I have no need to go through you to get to Potter. If I wanted to meet them, I would have approached them myself. But, thank you for the offer." After saying that, Quinn changed the topic and talked to Tracy about Hogwarts as Daphne listened. The next part of the train ride was quite similar to last year's. When the trolley lady came, he ordered the same bar of chocolate just as last year and asked for the buffet car timing. But then Draco Malfoy came into the compartment. He was walking to the back of the train when something caught his eye, and he barged into Quinn's with his two bodyguards, Vincent Crabbe and Gregory Goyle. "Hey, Greengrass, you are friends with Potter. Do you know where he is sitting?" asked. "No," demanded Draco. Quinn slightly tilted his head and looked at the scene with interest. Daphne looked at Draco and spoke, "No, I don't. Now, don't disturb me and get out." She didn't give him a second look and returned to the book she was reading. Draco seemed miffed and then looked at Tracy and sneered while speaking to Daphne, "It looks like you are still hanging with your filthy half-blood pet." Tracy's face darkened as she looked down, and Daphne snapped her book close and confronted Draco, "Dare to say that again, Malfoy, and I will hex you to tomorrow. Tracy is my best friend, and you would treat her properly. Speak to her like this again, and I will make your life miserable." By the end of her rant, Daphne had her wand out and was pointing it at Draco. Daphne's momentum overwhelmed Draco. His face turned red, and he spluttered, "My father will hear of this Greengrass." That prompted a laugh from Quinn. The whole scene was just too damn funny. Seeing Draco splutter in a panic about his father was comedy gold. Quinn's stifled laugh reached Draco's ears, and when he saw Quinn, Draco decided to save some dignity by targeting Quinn. He looked at Quinn and spoke, "What are you laughing at? Do you know who I am?" Quinn gently closed his book and stood up. He walked closer to Draco and held out his hand for a handshake, and Draco actually took Quinn's hand. Draco didn't know why he was holding Quinn's hand, but something compelled him to shake Quinn's hand, and it wasn't magic. It was pure body language and confidence that allowed Quinn to command the room. Quinn squeezed Draco's hand firmly and answered, "I know who you are, Mr. Malfoy. For who I am, my name is Quinn West. You asked me what I was laughing at. I was laughing at you. Now, why don't you apologize to Ms. Davis, and we can call this over? I would rather not look at you more than the bare minimum." All of Draco's plans or quips were already out of his head. He was just staring into Quinn, who was smiling, but the smile seemed discordant to Draco and made him uncomfortable. "Ha ha, what will you do if I don't apologize? I will have you know that you are talking to a Malfoy. You are in the presence of someone better than you," spoke Draco, hoping that he would scare, but it didn't. "I already told you that I recognize you, Mr. Malfoy. As for what I would do, you will only leave here if you apologize to Ms. Davis, or I will hold you for the rest of the train ride. And, trust me, I am not joking. And, for you being better than me, yeah, that is a good joke," spoke Quinn in a humorous tone, but everybody could decipher the true meaning from his words. My father will know of this. He is close to the minister." "I will have your wand snapped," spoke Draco, pulling out the daddy card. Quinn nodded and replied, "Sure, you can write to your father, but for now, you are still apologizing." Saying that, Quinn tightened his grip on Malfoy's hand and gave a stern look to Crabbe and Goyle, warning them not to interfere. Draco winced, feeling the grip on his hand. He looked at Tracy and murmured an apology, "I am sorry." "Now, repeat that again and add that you won't do it again," instructed Quinn. Draco wanted to protest, but a look from Quinn made him stop. "I am sorry. I won't do it again," spoke Draco with a face flushed red with embarrassment. Quinn smiled and released Draco's hand, who quickly put it behind his back. Quinn patted Draco's clothes in a cleaning motion and said, "That wasn't difficult, was it? Now that you have apologized, please leave. You were talking about Potter's cabin, right? Go find it, go on, hurry along." After saying that, Quinn shut the door close and ignored the stunned and embarrassed Draco. Quinn walked back to his seat and sat in the now silent compartment. Tracy looked at Quinn with an amazed and thankful look, "Thank you." It truly amazed her at how Quinn had handled Draco. It was quite a sight to watch. Quinn smiled and replied, "Please, it was nothing. He made you uncomfortable and was about to get on my nerves, so I made him leave, but not before teaching him a lesson. And overall, it was a fun experience." Daphne humphed and interjected, "We could have taken care of it ourselves. You didn't need to interfere." She was unhappy that she was not the one to make Draco apologize to her friend. Quinn slightly tilted his head in confusion. "Us? You must be confused, Ms. Greengrass. I only stood up for Ms. Davis. I wasn't thinking about you at all. That is why I only asked Mr. Malfoy to apologize to Ms. Davis and not you, remember?" Hearing Quinn's words made Tracy giggle, and Daphne frowned and glared at him. Quinn looked at the time on his pocket watch and asked his two companions, "Would you two like to accompany me to the buffet car for lunch?" Tracy jumped at the invitation, "Sure, we would love to join you." Daphne was about to say something, but Tracy pinched her to get her to stop talking. Daphne could only rub the pinched spot and relented in silence. Scene break. After they returned from lunch, the peace of Quinn's compartment was once again interrupted. A person opened the door, causing all three people to look up at the person. Oh boy, were they surprised to see Ivy Potter standing at the door. Ivy was about to say something when she met eyes with Daphne and said, "Oh, Daphne, didn't see you there. How are you?" Daphne quirked her brow and replied, "Your eyesight must be getting worse. Why don't you get them checked? Maybe then you and your brother would match." Ivy narrowed her eyes and countered, "Or maybe it was because I mistook you for a statue. There isn't much difference between you and a statue, you know." While they were arguing, Quinn nudged Tracy and asked, "Ms. Davis, what is happening?" Didn't you say these two were friends? Tracy giggled and replied, oh, they are friends, all right. They just don't know how to express themselves. They are cute like that. Quinn could tell that there was more to this story, but he let it go and commented, if you say so, and I would have to say this is much more interesting. Tracy smiled brightly and responded, I know, right. The two girls exhausted their insults for each other, and Ivy turned to Tracy and asked while waving her hello, hey Tracy, I am looking for a toad. Have you seen one? Tracy waved back and shook her head, no, I haven't seen a toad, sorry. Just then, another person came, and Quinn recognized her as Hermione Granger. Looking at her, Quinn had one thought, yeah, that is Emma Watson, all right. She looked at Ivy and asked, did you find Neville's toad? Ivy shook her head and replied, no, not yet. Quinn decided to offer them some help. You should approach one of the prefects and tell them about the missing toad. Ask them to relay the message to the driver, who would announce it over the speakers across the train. That way, you would reach all the students in the train. It would be much more efficient for them to ask the driver rather than going to every compartment. Plus, he didn't give the idiotic advice of using a summoning charm, a Kyo, as it didn't summon living beings. Ivy looked at the third person in the room for the first time and saw Quinn. She immediately recognized him from the bookstore, you dash. But Hermione spoke before her, thank you, we would do that. And, before Ivy could start again, she was once again cut by Daphne, who stood up and spoke before Ivy, good, now that you got some help, leave. She didn't wait for Ivy to respond and shut the door. Outside of the room, Hermione dragged Ivy along. Daphne sat back and glanced at Tracy and Quinn, who were smiling at her. She asked, what? Both of them shook her head and replied in unison, nothing Tilda. When the Hogwarts Express was about to reach the Hogsmeade station and Daphne, Tracy, and Quinn had changed, Quinn decided to give them his consultation calling cards. He handed them the black calling cards and explained, if you need help with anything, please come to this room, and I will help you at a suitable price. I also accept IOUs of equal value. I would be in for a consultation when the back of the card shows you an IN symbol. So, don't be shy to come to me for help. The two girls looked at the black and gold card and saw the front side switch between aid and solution to any of your problems. Then he kissed Tracy's knuckles and did a mock bow to Daphne before separating from them to join the other students. Tracy waved his goodbye and said to Daphne, Quinn is so dreamy Tilda. Daphne just stared at her friend like she was crazy, but she did look at the card he had handed to her. Chapter 26, New Professor, and Prediction Party. Quinn walked into the Great Hall, once again taking in the grandness of the hall, and made his way to Ravenclaw bench. He looked at the long bench of Hogwarts robes customized to contain Ravenclaw colors. Robes had blue linings, a Ravenclaw symbol on the left chest, and a blue tie with white and silver stripes. Quinn, too, was wearing the same robes. Last year, the house elves had customized Quinn's robes on his first night at Hogwarts. Quinn had taken a liking to the Ravenclaw blue after wearing it every day. Quinn searched for his roommates and found them. Eddie Carmichael and Marcus Belby, Ravenclaws from the same year as Quinn. He made a beeline towards them and smiled when he saw their seating arrangement. As usual, Eddie was sitting opposite Marcus, prepared to stay away from his terrible eating habits. Quinn also made the same decision and walked to Eddie's side. He patted Eddie on his back as he sat beside him. Good to see you again, guys. How are you two? Said Quinn in greeting. Hey, Quinn, where were you? I didn't see you on the train, asked Eddie from his side. Oh, I got early and sat down before the Potters got to the platform, answered Quinn. You could have come to see me, complained Eddie. Quinn shrugged and responded, I forgot, I had some interesting company. And, you could have done the same, I didn't see you coming to me. Both the boys looked at each other before smiling and dapping in greeting. Oh, I got a little late at the platform. Believe me when I say that for a second, I wasn't sure if I would be able to make it aboard the train. The crowd to see the Potters was crazy. Marcus shared his experience of the morning at the platform. Eddie leaned towards Marcus and asked, so, did you see the Potters? I wasn't able to see them. I did go to their compartment, but they had drawn the curtains. Marcus shook his head, and Quinn spoke, hey, I saw Ivy Potter, boy who lived's twin sister. She came to my compartment looking for a toad. Eddie, Marcus, and other Ravenclaw near them leaned towards Quinn for more details. "A toad?" asked Marcus. Quinn nodded and told them about her, that she had red hair and green eyes and that the train announcement was his idea, but nothing of the interaction that she and Daphne had. That stuff was personal. As time passed, Quinn also greeted other Ravenclaw as they arrived in the Great Hall. "Chang and Edgecombe, how are you two girls doing? Did anything fun in the break?" Quinn made small talk with Cho Chang and Marietta Edgecombe, who stopped by for saying hi. "I went to Italy with my family." "How about you?" chatted Cho. "Oh. Italy, beautiful country, isn't it?" "Did you go to the Vatican?" asked Quinn and shrugged in response. I didn't go anywhere this year. My family was busy this summer. But I did have a lot of fun. Did a lot of reading." He also congratulated Penelope Clearwater when he saw her. "Clearwater, is that a prefect badge I see?" "Congratulations, you deserve it." Penelope smiled and replied, "Thank you, Quinn. I hope I won't be seeing you out after curfew." Quinn put on an innocent expression and said, "What? I am always in the common room after curfew. You know I love to follow the rules." She swatted his shoulder and "Stop with that look. You are always the last one to enter the common room. Most of the time, you come back in is after curfew. So, please don't let me catch you, or I would have to give you a detention." Quinn shrugged and proudly said, "Oh, come on. I start my day early and end it late. You should look at with positivity, recognize my hard work that would make a Hufflepuff proud." She shook his head and commented, "Or, a silver tongue that would make a Slytherin proud." Quinn winked and smiled, "Prefect Clearwater, you are giving me a poor reputation. I call it smooth talking and not a silver tongue. It is one of my good points." She sighed and relented, "Only you, West. Only you." She left, but not before saying, "But I will still give you a detention if I see you." After a little while, Quinn was looking around when he saw someone enter the hall, and Quinn wasn't sure what to make of it. He truly wasn't expecting this person to be here. Quinn watched as Lily Potter entered the Great Hall and walked to the staff's high table. The student body murmured, seeing Lily Potter, and whispered among themselves. After wrapping his head around seeing Lily Potter at Hogwarts, most definitely as a new teacher, Quinn laughed hard. Eddie looked at Quinn and asked, "Why are you laughing?" Quinn shook his head and chuckled to himself, "It's nothing. This is also amusing to me." "Right, amusing. We were already getting too Potter. One more isn't nothing to worry about." Quinn looked at Dumbledore chatting with Lily and thought, "Oh, Dumbledore, you clever old goat." In Quinn's mind, Lily Potter being here was an obvious attempt from Dumbledore to keep the Potters close. He wanted to have maximum influence over the Potters, and what better way than to allow Lily Potter to stay close to her children. Potters already held Dumbledore in high regards, and with this, he had done them another substantial favor. Quinn also glanced at Quirinus Quirrell. He was wearing a turban and fidgeted in his chair. Quinn looked at the turban and could imagine Voldemort's face on the back of Quirrell's head. The cannon was afoot, and Quinn was here at Ground Zero. Scene break. When all the students, second year and above, settled down in their house long tables, McGonagall came to the Great Hall and announced, "The new first years are ready and waiting in the antechamber, so please behave and support them as they get sorted." And then McGonagall led the new students into the Great Hall. With McGonagall in the lead, the new first years walked in a line, taking in the grand sight of the Great Hall, forgetting their nervousness for just a moment. When the students reached the front of the hall, they gathered just below the steps that led to the high table. Seeing them look all nervous made Quinn's heart swell. "Look at their expressions, they all look so nervous," said Quinn as he smiled. Marcus looked at him with doubt and asked, "And that makes you happy?" Quinn nodded and smiled widely, "Yeah." The Sorting Hat sang its introductory song, but Quinn didn't join the rest of the school in applause as he associated the hat with bad memories, and last year on that stool made him feel exposed. The sorting finally started, and Eddie looked at Marcus and Quinn, "Remember your bets. The first student of this year will go to which house?" "I choose Ravenclaw, Marcus chose Gryffindor, and Quinn chose Hufflepuff. The winner gets 5 sickles from the other 2. Put the money on the table." Quinn had proposed a bet among his roommates, and they had enthusiastically agreed to it. The surrounding people also heard them and began betting with each other. Soon the entire student body was betting. McGonagall unrolled a roll of parchment and spoke the first name, Abbott, Hannah. A pink-faced girl with blonde pigtails stumbled out of line. McGonagall put the hat on her, which fell right down over her eyes, and sat down. After a pause, the hat shouted, "Hufflepuff." Quinn smiled and collected the money on the table, payday tilde. Then he looked at his two friends and purposed another wager. "How about this, if I guess 30 students' houses correctly, you two will give me half galleon, but if I get even one less than 30, I will give you both a galleon each. How about it, deal?" He placed 2 galleons on the table. The two looked at each other and nodded. Both pulled 8 sickles and 15 nuts out of their pockets and placed them on the table. Eddie looked at Quinn and repeated, 30 and no less. Quinn smiled and said, "Get ready, boys, you are about to see something truly magical. Also, the first girl that went Hufflepuff is included." Quinn rubbed his hands. He saw Susan Bones go up the steps and said, "Hufflepuff." The next moment the hat yelled, "Hufflepuff." Then Quinn advantage of his knowledge and nailed the houses of every character he recognized. Ravenclaw. Boot, Terry. Ravenclaw. Ravenclaw. Brocklehurst, Mandy. Ravenclaw. Gryffindor. Brown, Lavender. Gryffindor. Slytherin. Bulstrode, Millicent. Slytherin. Oh, I am not sure about this one, but Slytherin. Davis, Tracy. Slytherin. Another Badger, Hufflepuff. Finch-Fletchley, Justin. Hufflepuff. Gryffindor. Finnegan, Seamus. Gryffindor. Definitely, absolutely, 100% sure, Gryffindor. Granger, Hermione. Gryffindor. Ah, she is the classic Slytherin material and the better kind. Greengrass, Daphne. Slytherin. Sigh, the big guy is going to Slytherin. Goyle, Gregory. Slytherin. Our housemate, a prestigious Ravenclaw. Lee, Sue. Ravenclaw. He looks like he is about to wet his pant. You know what, Gryffindor. Longbottom, Neville. Gryffindor. Hufflepuff. MacDougal, Morag. Hufflepuff. Slytherin, no other choice. A pity for the Slytherin house. Well, at least they would have money. Malfoy, Draco. Slytherin. Looks like a typical Slytherin. Not, Theodore. Slytherin. Slytherin all the way. Parkinson, Pansy. Slytherin. She feels like a Ravenclaw. Potil, Padma. Ravenclaw. Twins, huh? Gryffindor. Potil, Parvati. Gryffindor. By the time Quinn had gotten 10 students correct, the entirety of Ravenclaw table was hanging onto his every word. Quinn's predictions were passed onto the entire table via word of mouth. Because of Quinn, the Ravenclaw table had the most fun during the sorting ceremony. On the staff's high table, Lily Potter was sitting beside her favorite teacher, Phileas Flitwick. She noticed how the Ravenclaw table was oohing, ohing, and clapping for every student. Even for those who were being sorted into Slytherin. She knew how intense the house rivalry could be. In fact, the cheers were increasing with every student. Lily turned to the Flitwick and said, "Professor, your students are showing great inter-house unity. They are cheering so enthusiastically for every student. It is quite nice to see it. In my time, only the house cheered for their sorties. I am impressed that you were able to teach them to rise above house rivalry." Flitwick also noticed his house table, and after listening to his new former student now colleague's praise, he felt pride as Ravenclaw's head of the house. He didn't know what was the difference this year, but he was happy about it. It would be quite a shock for him when he would later learn that the Ravenclaw students weren't cheering for the new students, but for Quinn, who was on a roll of guessing the sorting of the new students. Finally, it was Potter's turn on the sorting chair. McGonagall looked at the scroll and then looked at the new students before announcing, "Potter, Harry." While everybody on Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, and Slytherin tables were standing and craning their necks to get a look at the boy who lived, the Ravenclaw table was watching Quinn, who had his elbows on the table, fingers interlocked. He looked left and then right before speaking, Gryffindor. A series of nods and murmurs went through the Ravenclaw table as the Ravenclaw students turned their eyes to Harry Potter, who was climbing the steps to the stool. Quinn observed this version of Harry Potter and, for the first time, took note of the difference between him and the canon Harry. This one looked confident, unlike the nervous canon Harry. He was smiling as he sat on the bar stool, and his eyes were looking at the Gryffindor table. The moment the hat dropped on Harry's head, it shouted its decision, Gryffindor. The Gryffindor table went wild, and Harry also stood up from the bar stool with a bright smile. But he stopped in confusion when the Ravenclaw table's cheers drowned the Gryffindor table's cheers. Harry was confused. Were they happy that he didn't come to Ravenclaw? The staff and faculty, along with the other three houses, also felt puzzled. What was wrong with Ravenclaw this year? Quinn didn't feel surprised at the swift decision. This version of Harry differed from the canon version and wasn't a hat stop. He turned his eyes to Lily Potter. She was looking at Harry and fondly smiling while clapping. She must be quite happy to have her child in the same house as herself, thought Quinn. His friends prompted him to make the prediction, and Quinn looked at McGonagall, who said the next name. Potter, Ivy. Quinn wasn't sure about this one. He had seen her at the bookstore Lost in the Book, but she was also raised in the Potter household with two Gryffindor parents and Sirius Black as a frequent visitor. Quinn looked at the galleon on the table. He picked one and tossed it into the air. He caught the coin when it came down and looked at it. He looked at the people around him and said, it was a close decision between Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, but the galleon has spoken. Ivy Potter will go to Gryffindor. The hall went quiet as everybody waited for the hat's decision. The hat stayed on Ivy's head for almost a minute. Everybody saw the hat move and knew the time had come. Gryffindor. It was followed by a chant from the Weasley twins, we got Potters, we got Potters. Quinn pumped his fist and spoke, yeah. Quinn knew that not all studious people went to Ravenclaw. It was a person's beliefs and choices that decided their house in Hogwarts. He didn't know Ivy Potter well enough to know where she would end up, and Quinn solely based his prediction on what he had seen and heard of her. Ivy going to Gryffindor was pure luck and speculation. For example, Quinn knew Hermione Granger is smart and studious, but her beliefs weren't the same as a Ravenclaw. She didn't hold a Ravenclaw's values of being clever, scholarly over Gryffindor's bravery and courage. In the books, Hermione herself had said to Harry, books, cleverness, but there are far more important things like bravery. The hat also added his own thought to the decision, like where the child would grow the most. If Hermione had gone to Ravenclaw, she might not have been able to make friends. When it comes to academics, Ravenclaw is a cutthroat house. There are plenty of backstabbings and betrayals in Ravenclaw, thought Quinn as he looked around the joyous house that became ultra-competitive during examination time. He looked at Gryffindor and Hermione and thought, maybe that is why Hermione was sorted into Gryffindor. The sorting continued, and only one person was remaining. McGonagall called him to the bar stool, Zabani, Blaise. Quinn stared at Blaise and announced, he will go to Slytherin. The Ravenclaw house waited with bated breath for the hat to announce its decision. Slytherin. The second the hat announced the sorting, some of the older Ravenclaw students lifted Quinn and threw him in the air to celebrate. Whoa! This is somewhat wacky. Hey, do it more. But they had to stop when McGonagall yelled at them. Albus Dumbledore was chuckling when he got to his feet. He beamed at the Ravenclaw student before looking at all the students, his arms opened wide. Welcome all, he said. Welcome to a brand new year at Hogwarts. Before we start the banquet, and I get to know about all the fun the House Ravenclaw is having, I would like to say a few words. Here we go, nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak. Previous year Quinn had taken a trip to the kitchens and confirmed his theory. Nitwit, Blubber, Oddment, Tweak were indeed the name of the house elves, and they were the oldest house elves in Hogwarts and took care of the first meal of the year. After the meals were done, Dumbledore made his annual announcements. I have a few start-of-term notices to give you. He looked at all the student body and continued, "First years should note that the forest on the grounds is forbidden to all pupils. And a few of our older students would do well to remember that as well." He repeated the same words as last year before saying, "And finally, I must tell you that this year, the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side is out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death." Quinn, who had just finished his pudding, put his spoon down and sighed as he heard those words. "Lovely. Absolutely lovely." Marcus looked at Quinn before asking, "What is?" Quinn sighed before smiling towards his roommate. "The pudding, of course." Dumbledore continued as he had said nothing out of order. "Lastly, I would like to introduce you to a new addition to Hogwarts." He gestured towards Lily Potter, who stood up and smiled at the student body. "From this year onwards, Madam Lily Potter will be joining Hogwarts staff. She would take the position of Professor of Muggle Studies. Please, give her a warm round of applause." Quinn looked at Lily Potter and then the Potter twins before finally looking at Quirinus Quirrell, Voldemort's host. "Potters and Voldemort, both are here, and so is the Philosopher's Stone. All the players have gathered for the first time. The game has begun," thought Quinn, giving Dumbledore, Quirinus Quirrell, Lily Potter one last glance before walking and fading away in the crowd of students. Chapter 27, Rant, and the New Base. In Ravenclaw Common Room, every complimented Quinn on his predictions. Then the prefects asked them to leave the Common Room for the first year's inauguration to Ravenclaw by Flitwick. Quinn checked the assignment chart for the dorm room and climbed the boys' dorm stairs to his new dorm. He found that Eddie and Marcus were already there. "We are roommates again this year, nice," said Quinn to his first-year and now second-year roommates. After getting changed, Quinn retrieved two A.I.D calling cards and presented them to Eddie and Marcus. Eddie looked at the black and gold card in his hand and questioned, "What is this?" Quinn moved his hand behind his back and explained, "If you ever need help. Help with anything at all. Come to this room, and I will help you for a suitable price or an IOU. In this room, you would find the solutions to all of your problems." Marcus looked away from the card and asked, "Even for homework?" Quinn chuckled and waved his hand. "No, you can ask me about homework here. I won't charge you guys for homework, just think of it as roommate perks. But, anything other than that, come to that room, and I will give you a roommate discount." "Do you have permission to use this room?" asked Eddie as he placed his card in his dorm desk drawer. Quinn nodded and replied, "Yeah, I have Flitwick's permission. Wrote him a letter in the break." Quinn was transferring his clothes to his dorm cupboard when he heard a knock on the door. He looked up to see one of the Ravenclaw prefects at the door. "Yes?" asked Quinn as he walked towards the door. The prefect handed Quinn 3 sheets of parchment. "Here you go, this is the timetable for second-year students, take one and pass the others to your roommates." Quinn received the sheets from the prefect and spoke, "Thank you." He dropped the other sheets on Eddie's and Marcus's bed and climbed his own bed to check the timetable. "Oh, this is great. I have the whole of Friday free. This is much better than last year," Quinn spoke with delighted in his tone. With the Friday free, Quinn would have 3 straight free days. After sorting his memories for the day in his mindscape by memory immersion, Quinn decided to turn in for the day and sleep for the first working day of his second year at Hogwarts. Scene break. The next day, Quinn got up nice and early for his day. After brushing his teeth and washing his face, he took out his running shoes and changed into sportswear and headed to one of the grounds in Hogwarts premises. Mind, body, and soul were 3 facilities for magic. Quinn had been developing mind since he was 8 and met Alan D. Baddeley. He took on developing the body, the second facility, when he was 9 years old and started exercising outside of his dance lessons with Ms. Rosie. Every morning he would go out for a run and run a 5K, 5 kilometer of 5,000 m, 3.1 mile, every day. It would usually take him around 22 minutes every day to complete his track, in which he would think about the upcoming day and what he wanted to do on that day. Quinn found that going on a run was an excellent way to start his day with a clear mind. So after roughly a quarter of an hour after waking up, Quinn would be back in his dorm room, getting ready to take a bath. After spending 15 minutes in the bathroom, he would come out refreshed and wake his roommates. Marcus would wake up with a light nudge, but Eddie wouldn't wake up with anything less than a kick. By 7:10, Quinn would be out of his dorm room and the Ravenclaw common room and would be on his way to the Great Hall for breakfast. Today, Quinn was eating his breakfast like usual when he heard Flitwick calling out to him from the high table. "Mr. West, please come here when you have finished your meal," said Flitwick from his chair at the high table. Quinn nodded in response, and he especially noted that no one else heard Flitwick. His voice only made its way to my ears. Now, how did he accomplish this? Sound isolation? No, that would restrict the movement of voice in an area. He must have used a sound spell that allowed him to target his voice to the listener. But then how did he make sure that his voice didn't leak as the distance increased? Quinn thought as his hands moved automatically to feed himself as he thought about the concepts behind Flitwick's show of magic. Quinn didn't notice that Flitwick was looking at him and laughing in his squeaky voice. Flitwick could have charmed a parchment to fly to Quinn to convey his message, but he decided to use his current method to see Quinn's reaction. It did not disappoint him when he saw Quinn deep in thought, obviously thinking about how he could talk to him with no one knowing. After Quinn finished eating his breakfast, he made his way to the high table and greeted the professors who were looking at him. "Good morning, professors. I hope you all had a pleasant sleep last night." Flitwick smiled at his charge and immediately spoke. "Good morning to you as well, Mr. West. Did you figure out how I called you?" Hearing that, Quinn realized Flitwick did it on purpose, knowing that he would think about it. It made him chuckle in reply. "Not yet, Professor. But do give me a day or two, and I will get back to you with an answer." Flitwick grinned and asked, "Or, I could give you an answer right now." Quinn shook his head and refused. "No, thank you, Professor. But I would like to find an answer on my own. This way, I would learn a lot more than if you spoon-fed me the answer right now." Flitwick clapped his hands and praised. "I wouldn't expect anything less than you, Mr. West." Quinn felt a gaze on him and turned to the source and found Lily Potter staring at him with interest. He decided to ask, "Is something wrong, Professor Potter?" She shook her head and responded, "Oh, it's nothing. I was just listening to your conversation." Flitwick jumped in and introduced Quinn to Lily. "Lily, meet Quinn West. He is at the top of his year, the smartest of his class. He scored number 1 around all the subjects." Quinn smiled in humbleness. "You exaggerate, Professor." Lily looked at Quinn and asked, "So, Mr. West, do you have plans to take Muggle studies next year?" The question elicited a laugh out of Quinn. "Oh God, no. No offense to your teaching capabilities, Professor, but the Muggle studies subject at Hogwarts is worthless." Lily Potter frowned as she heard Quinn's response. "Do you consider Muggles lesser than you, Mr. West?" Quinn laughed a little louder and responded, "Of course not, Professor. The magical kind is just a minor part of the world. The non-magical kind outnumbers us in population by an extremely large margin. I don't consider the non-magiques, the Muggle, the Nomai, the Canti spells, lesser than me, I do not. I believe the Muggles are not lesser, but others. Not worthless, but of other value. Not disposable, but of a different disposition. Magic is a gift that blooms in rare individuals, and even among them, a few really appreciate it. I don't look down on non-magicals, but I do consider them different from me, a person who can use magic, not because I can do magic, but because of the society I was raised in." Quinn gestured at the Great Hall behind him and continued, "Most of the people from magical families have no connection to the world outside the magical community. They do not know how large the world is, and the class at Hogwarts will not help them understand that." Quinn turned back to Lily and asked, "Professor, you are a first-generation magical, right?" Lily seemed confused and asked, "First-generation magical?" Quinn understood her confusion and answered, "A Muggle-born, Professor." "Oh, yes. I am a Muggle-born," answered Lily after she understood what Quinn meant. "I have read the curriculum of Muggle studies. Do you as a Muggle-born really think that the severely outdated curriculum would help them understand them about the big world outside?" "Professor Potter, I am a pureblood with no non-magical ancestors for generations upon generations. But I know the non-magical world, I visit it frequently, I love watching movies, eating at fast food joints, trying out their clothes, and experiencing many other things the magicals couldn't even imagine. The architecture, the technology, they have things we haven't even started to dive in. I know how different it is from this one, and I can, at this moment, leave the magical world and be a part of the non-magical world. It is because I genuinely gave it a chance." Opting for Muggle studies isn't giving the non-magical world a chance. So, my final answer? No, I am not going to join the Muggle studies class next year. Quinn immediately turned to Flitwick and asked, Professor Flitwick, why did you call me? Flitwick snapped out of his trance and took out a key from his pocket, and spoke while giving it to Quinn. This is the key to the room you asked for. Quinn took the key and smiled brightly. Thank you, Professor. It was really kind of you to accept my request. I promise I will use the room properly. Now, please excuse me, I have to prepare for my classes. Quinn was going to leave, but decided to say one last thing to Lily. Professor, if you really want to introduce the non-magical world, then I would suggest that you diverge from the curriculum and teach what you think would help. It probably won't help them pass their exams, but it would help them understand the non-magicals. He smiled before finishing, Professor Potter, I hope that you would have a great time at Hogwarts. And with that, Quinn left. Flitwick and Lily sat in stunned silence about what had just taken place. It was a while before Flitwick spoke. Last year when I had just met Mr. West, I thought he was like you. Bright, smart, intelligent, but as I came to know him better, I realized Mr. West differed greatly from any student I had ever taught. He is smart, he is bright, intelligent, and much more. From what I have seen, Mr. West truly loves magic. As long as it has something to do with magic, he would be interested in it, but he doesn't ignore the things that have nothing to do with magic. He loves new experiences. Do you know he explores the castle every single day? To him, this castle isn't just a building but a magical marvel that needs to be studied and explored. He just doesn't learn a spell's incantation and wand movement. He dives deep into the concept behind the spell and works to truly understand the magic from its very core. Flitwick smiled before continuing, he is polite and curt. He knows how to hold a conversation and has excellent social skills. He is quite popular among his peers because of his personality and how he handles himself. He chuckled before continuing, Mr. West is the only student in Hogwarts that Severus doesn't dislike, and that is quite something. If it wasn't for his obsession with magic that keeps him busy and gives him barely enough time to socialize with others, I would have considered Mr. West to be a perfect child. I really look forward to his growth. Mr. West is an enigma, and I want to see him grow. Flitwick didn't comment on what Lily should do with her subject as it wasn't his place to tell her, and Flitwick himself didn't know too much about the non-magical world. But he understood what Quinn was trying to say as he himself had to navigate between two different worlds because of his ancestry. Lily Potter just stayed silent as she thought about the things Quinn had said to her. She had imagined a lot of ways her first day as a teacher at Hogwarts would go, but one thing was for sure, that what happened now wasn't one of them. Scene break. Quinn didn't have his first class till 11 o'clock, so he decided to visit his newly acquired base of operations for A.I.D. and set it up for business. Quinn was excited to see the classroom and excitedly climbed the stair to the 5th floor. He was so excited that he almost got caught in one of the trap stairs in a staircase. The allotted classroom was in the opposite direction from the 5th floor entrance to the Ravenclaw Tower. So, there weren't many students loitering around in this area. Quinn found the room quite easily, as it was on the main corridor of the 5th floor. Hats off to Flitwick, he gave me a prime piece of property, thought Quinn as he used the key to unlock the door to the classroom. The door unlocked with a thump, and Quinn entered the classroom by pushing the door open. Age-old dust immediately greeted him and prompted Quinn to fan the area in front of his face. He saw a large classroom caked with dust. In the room were a few desks and chairs piled in the corner and blackboards on both sides of the room. The floors near the walls where the blackboards were hanging were raised to form platforms for teachers. It had no windows because of its location, and the only source of lighting was the 3 candle chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. Quinn walked to the center of inside the empty classroom and closed his eyes. He began concentrating his magic, gathering more and more magic from his magical core. When he thought the magic was enough, he casted an abnormally powerful scouring charm, Scourgify, for cleaning the layers of dust and dirt in the room, and a Scourge charm to clean the sticky green ectoplasm created by passing ghosts. The wave magic emitted from Quinn as the center, and inch by inch the grim dirt and choking dust cleared out of the room, leaving squeaky clean surfaces all around the room. The green ectoplasm was eradicated from existence by the Scourge charm. Quinn looked around the room with a smile, much better. The room still needed a lot of work. He needed to polish the floors, touch up the walls, and ask the house elves to provide magic candles for the chandeliers. Quinn roamed the room and decided how he was going to use it. He decided to partition one part of the room near the door for the meeting room for A.I.D, and use the rest of the wide classroom as a workshop to work on projects. I would need a big table, some chairs, and decor for the meeting room. He turned to look at the rest of the room and noted a lot of workstation tables to line the walls, cabinets to store the paperwork, maybe a center island. He stepped back a few steps and continued, the partition would go right about here. Quinn tapped his chin with a finger and said to himself, I could get most of the stuff I need from Room of Requirement. The Room of Hidden Things would have all the furniture I would need, and I could use the glass panes in the Room of Hidden Things for the partition. A little transmutation to make one huge glass partition, unbreakable charms to strengthen the glass, and maybe frosting it to make it opaque. Quinn took out his pocket watch and considered, I still have time. Okay, I will go to the Room of Hidden Things to get the stuff. Scene break. It had taken Quinn quite a while to find the appropriate furniture for his new base, and all of it was broken in some way. Quinn would have to fix every piece of furniture to make it usable, but overall it was a great find. He shrunk all of them down and transferred them to the new A.I.D base. He looked at his pocket watch and thought, I will return after school to fix all of this. It had taken quite some time to find the things as the Room of Hidden Things disabled the use of summoning charm, a Kyo, to find objects. Quinn had to manually find all the furniture he needed. He was also very grateful that he didn't find Voldemort's diadem Horcrux, as he was neither equipped nor confident to deal with a Horcrux. After his classes for the day were over, Quinn went to his dorm to get changed, and then instead of going to the new base, he went to the outskirts of the Forbidden Forest to collect wood scraps and swiped wood used for lighting the fireplaces. He needed the wood to fix the furniture. They were missing parts that couldn't be restored with the repairing charm, Reparo, so he needed extra wood to substitute missing parts. In the base, Quinn began fixing the wooden furniture by using the repairing charm and used transmutation to add wood to the broken furniture, and finished the furniture with liberal use of color-changing charm to give the repaired furniture an even color. Next, he dumped all the glass he had found in the Room of Hidden Things on the floor. Quinn didn't care if it broke, it was all going to be broken down by transmutation. One by one, Quinn transmuted the glass into one enormous glass wall that went from floor to ceiling that divided the room into two parts. He finished the work by layering unbreakable charms on the partition to strengthen it. He moved the table and chair to the meeting office area and stepped back to admire his work. The office was bland and empty. The glass wall looked beyond ugly because of the numerous different glass used to create it. The walls were faded and looked old, plus the floor beneath his feet was dull, and overall the room needed a lot of work to make it presentable. But it is a start, spoke Quinn as he thought about the future of this operation. I hope it will be fun. Chapter 28, Reckon, and the First Customer. It took Quinn a week to complete the makeover of the office and the workshop. He had touched up everything that he could find. Waxed the floors, paint the walls, put paintings and knickknacks in the office, some plants to make everything look presentable. After completion of the decoration, Quinn began his first major project. Quinn was going to recreate the Marauders map for his own purposes. The Marauders map was a document that revealed all the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Not only did it show every classroom, hallway, and corner of the castle, but it also showed every inch of the grounds, as well as all the secret passages that were hidden within its walls. The most noteworthy feature of the Marauders map was its ability to track people's positions within its range. The map could also accurately identify each person and was not fooled by animagi, polyjuice potions, or invisibility cloaks. Even the Hogwarts ghosts were not exempt. In the workshop part of his classroom, Quinn stood in front of the center island with his hand folded. The Marauders map is created from the use of homunculus charm, enabling the possessor of the map to track the movements of every person in the castle. Quinn unfolded his hands and picked up a fountain pen and scribbled notes on a sheet of paper. Quinn wasn't going to use the homunculus charm to create the map. Quinn decided he would use runes and runic magic to build his version. Let's begin from the start, Quinn said while walking to one of the drawers in the workshop and removed a 60 cm x 40 cm piece of off-white fabric from the drawer. Note, base, I am going to use cloth in place of parchment for the base of the map, Quinn said as he placed the fabric on the table and wrote the observation in his notes. Parchment or paper would be much more fragile than cloth fabric. Parchment is more susceptible to wear and tear than cloth, therefore, it is the better choice for the base of my map. Next step is to prepare the fabric for runic magic. I need to create a solution to soak the cloth in it to enable the fabric to house the runes and sustain the flow of magic, Quinn noted and took out a book from his book bag. The book that Quinn took out was a text on preparing various materials to enable runic magic. He flipped the pages to reach the chapter on cloth fabric and noted the potion a solution recipe in his project notes. The base recipe for the solution has been established. The subsequent step would be to research the ingredients and steps in the recipe and try to improve and optimize the recipe for my project. Runic magic required the surface on which the runes were drawn to be prepared, and this where potion brewing came into place. Quinn was also going to take this chance to improve the potion a solution recipe for future uses. The next stage of the project was to draw a plan for designing the rune cluster and rune layers for the map's working. Unlike Marauder's map, Quinn was going to use runes, and he needed to draw schematics for the runes that would go into the map. I am going to use two systems of runes, Elder Futhark and Japanese systems kanji, noted Quinn as he thought about the system of runes he was going to follow. Traditionally, using a minimum number of languages as systems while using runic magic was the best practice. Too many languages caused heterogeneity in the rune cluster, which didn't sit well in runic magic. Quinn's idea behind using Elder Futhark and kanji was rather simple. Not all languages had the same connection with magic, different languages had different connections with magic. Some had a powerful connection with magic and channeled magic with ease. Others held the advantage of flexibility in use, and using them would provide a variety of options. Over that, not all languages were connected with magic. For example, Tamil was the oldest language in the world, but it had no connection to magic. You couldn't use Tamil in runic magic. The same went for English, even though English had its roots in magical language, but it had no magical capabilities. Out of all runic languages Quinn was comfortable using, Elder Futhark had the deepest connection with magic, so Quinn chose to build his map based on Elder Futhark as it would provide the map a deep connection with magic. Kanji, on the other hand, was a language with the flexibility of options. Quinn required an amount of flexibility for something like the map. The problem faced was how to integrate these two runic languages together so they could work in harmony. Note: work out the arithmancy needed for Elder Futhark and kanji to work together. By the end of the week, create a feasible model for integrating these two languages. Quinn set a realistic goal for this stage. The next part of this project was the most important one. How would a cloth with runes know about the names and locations of the people in the castle? In the Marauder's map, the homunculus charm took care of this part, but Quinn wasn't going to take this approach. Quinn looked at the ceiling and walls, and he was looking at the answer. The answer was Hogwarts itself. He was going to use the castle to obtain the names of the people present on the premises. Hogwarts was a magical building that held some sort of sentience and would provide Quinn with all the information he needed. Quinn was sure of this method because Hogwarts was connected to powerful artifacts like Quill of Acceptance and Book of Admittance. All Quinn needed was to connect his version of the map to Hogwarts, and the map would have the names and locations of all the people present in Hogwarts. Information straight from a source that couldn't be fooled and was the most trustworthy of them all. Quinn had thought for hard and long how to establish this connection and finally had figured out a method to accomplish it. He was going to use the wards around Hogwarts. The very wards that were connected to Hogwarts and protected the people inside it, and if Quinn's map formed a connection to these wards, that would give him indirect access to Hogwarts information. After finishing planning for every stage of the project, he drafted a project document and schedule and finally stored everything in the manila folder. And on the cover of the manila folder, Quinn wrote the project name. Project Watch. Scene break. For weeks after Quinn drafted the plan for Project Watch, he stood in his workshop in front of the center island. On the center island were the various equipment and materials needed to assemble the map. Quinn put on his protective gloves and safety goggles. Let's start. He moved to the empty side of the island table. Quinn reached for a sheet tray and placed it in front of him. Next, he picked a transparent glass container with a transparent liquid in it. The liquid was a potion solution that would enable the cloth fabric for runic magic. Quinn had worked on the base recipe for this enabling potion and improved the formula by employing his potion brewing knowledge. The resultant potion was much more potent and could sustain a substantial amount of the magic. Quinn uncorked the container and carefully poured the liquid into the sheet tray. Then he carefully picked the off-white fabric and laid it in the sheet tray to soak in the solution. Quinn removed his gloves and picked up his pocket watch to keep track of time. Just before the soak time hit 9 minutes, Quinn once again wore his gloves, and the second the time reached 9 minutes, he removed the base of the map from the liquid and placed it on another large thick sheet of cloth to absorb the rest of the liquid. It took just above 1 minute before the map's cloth absorbed all the liquid and returned to a dry state. Quinn cleared the table and cleaned the table's surface, then placed a smooth wooden writing board on the table, and then laid the map's cloth base on it. He walked to the project's manila folder, opened it, and took out multiple sheets with rune schematics drawn on them. These were all the runes that he had to draw on the map's cloth base. He had researched and experimented with Elder Futhark and Kanji to create a working rune model for the map. He walked back to the wooden writing board and laid the schematic papers around the board for an unobstructed view. Then Quinn picked up his roll-up brush bag that held all his calligraphy brushes and rolled it open. He also screwed upon multiple small bottles of runic inks for writing runes on the cloth base. Quinn wore his artist's glove and began the long process of drawing runes on the cloth with brushes. Each rune was carefully drawn, just as Quinn had practiced drawing in calligraphy. From time to time, he would change brushes and inks. Rune by rune, he built up the rune cluster for the map. With each layer of runes, Quinn would wait for the ink to dry and then activate them by running his magic through them, and then they would glow before disappearing into the fabric. Halfway through painting runes, Quinn retrieved the Hogwarts floor plans he had drawn from exploring the castle and its grounds for a whole school year. Quinn wasn't able to find the floor plans from the library or the room of requirements, so he had produced his own set. It was time to lay the Hogwarts floor plan into the place created by the runes to record the structure of Hogwarts. When Quinn finished drawing the runes and recording floor plans into the map, it was time to connect the map to Hogwarts. Quinn cleaned the table and the surroundings once again so that only the map was on the table. He took a deep breath and placed his whole hand on the map. Quinn pushed his magic into the cloth base, and both his magic and the cloth thrummed. Runes started to flicker on the cloth base, Quinn's magic activating every single rune in the layers upon layers of clusters drawn into the cloth, and suddenly Quinn felt a foreign wave of magic wash over him. Quinn knew the source of this magic, it was Hogwarts. It was scanning him, deciding if Quinn and his map should be allowed to be connected to the wards. He had expected this, but experiencing it was another thing. Quinn felt nervous and just silently waited, hoping that it would give him access. After a few seconds, the wave of foreign magic disappeared, and Quinn looked down to see the cloth base glowing. Quinn removed his hand, and when the glow subsided, the map came to life. Quinn smiled as he saw the words appear on the cloth. "Welcome to Reckon." Quinn's smile reached his ears and his eyes wide in glee as the words disappeared and the map showed him in the center, with the 5th floor schematics surrounding him. A blue dot showed his position on the map. Quinn had constructed his map, Reckon, to be much better than Marauder's map. He had color-coded the map for different people, blue for students, deep violet for teachers, yellow for ghosts, green for elves, orange for portraits, and red for outsiders. Quinn stared at himself on the map would always start on his position when activated. Quinn stared at the map and tested the next feature. He opened his mouth and said a name, Eddie Carmichael. The map immediately changed and shifted to Eddie's position on the map. He was also on the 5th floor but on the other side in the Ravenclaw common room. The map now showed the structure of the common room around Eddie and the people around him. With Reckon, Quinn could immediately find a person just by saying their name. It was quite a handy feature that Quinn wanted in his map. So, he decided to enchant it into the map. I mean, it would be a pain to find the person you are looking for throughout the castle. Imagine the time it would take to find someone on the map. Quinn could also zoom in and out of the map. And he could manually switch to any floor or person in Hogwarts, including ghosts, portraits, and elves. Another handy feature of the map was it showed passwords to every door and pathway in the school. Reckon showed him common room passwords, staff's offices and residents' passwords, headmaster's office's password, or any locked room or pathway. With Reckon in his hands, there was no place in Hogwarts that was out of Quinn's reach. With a wave of his hand, the cloth stiffened. Quinn had used his magic to stabilize the cloth so that it wouldn't crumble as a normal cloth does. Another wave and the cloth levitated in front of him. "Harry Potter," Quinn ordered, and the map immediately changed to Harry Potter's location. The boy who lived was currently in the viaduct courtyard, and beside him were Ron Weasley and some other Gryffindor. Maybe playing gobstones with them, thought Quinn. Albus Dumbledore, Quinn spoke another name, and the map complied and showed Albus Dumbledore's spot in deep violet. He was in his headmaster's tower, in the headmaster's office. Quinn could see the password to Dumbledore's office. Quinn smiled and ordered, "Nights out." The map turned off and crumbled down to the table. Quinn used his magic, and the cloth folded itself and shrunk down to the size of a standard handkerchief. He picked it up and pocketed it. The map's security was such that it would only work for Quinn. Reckon, unlike the Marauder's map, couldn't be used by anyone but him. Reckon needed a code word in his voice, his touch, and Quinn's own magic mold in a specific manner to activate. If even one of them was missing, Reckon wouldn't work and would essentially be a piece of cloth. Quinn walked to one of the wall-side tables and pulled out some sheets of paper from the ream of papers, and wrote down all the things that happened today during the construction of Reckon. He made detailed notes, and at the end, made his remark. Project Watch was a success. The creation of the tracking map, Reckon, happened without a hitch. Hogwarts provided me access to view the wards. But as expected, I didn't gain access to change them. I believe Hogwarts gave me access because I am a student and no reason else. Tests of the map also went well, and all the features of the map are functional. I am proud to note that Reckon has surpassed Marauder's map in functionality. Signing off. Quinn West. Quinn picked up the papers and walked to the manila folder assigned to the project, and charmed every page in the folder to be unreadable. No one except Quinn could read the contents of the pages. After charming the pages, Quinn packed the pages in the manila folder and sealed the folder so that only he could open it. Quinn picked up the folder and opened an empty drawer in a filing cabinet, and placed the manila folder of Project Watch in it. And, we are done. I always loved a good session of documentation and paperwork. Quinn exhaled a sigh of content. Scene break. Just a few days after Quinn created Reckon, he got his first customer. As usual, Quinn was working in his workshop when he heard a bell. It was one of those bells above the door that would jingle when the door was opened. Quinn's eyes shined as he conjured a mirror in mid-air and fixed his appearance. He took in a deep breath and said to his reflection, "Let's do this. It is your first customer, be sure to create a great first impression. It might be the make it or break it moment for me." When he entered the office, he found a Hufflepuff girl standing near the door, looking nervous. Quinn had memorized the names and faces of every student in Hogwarts. So, he knew she was a first-year student. Quinn put on a comforting smile and said, "Welcome to AID, how may I help you?" He gestured to the girl to sit down as he sat down behind his office desk. The girl, still nervous, took a seat in the chair in front of the table. "Before we start, may I ask where did you get my card?" asked Quinn. The girl looked up towards Quinn and answered, I found it in the holders under one of the desks in the Transmigration classroom." "Ah, thank you for answering," smiled Quinn. He had left many of his cards in classrooms to increase his customer base, and now looking at this girl, Quinn knew it was the right move. "What is your name?" asked Quinn as gently as he could. "Megan Jones," said the girl, and Quinn nodded. Of course, he already knew that. "I see. Now, Ms. Jones, what help do you need from me?" Megan took out a glass globe on a stand from her book bag and set it on the table. Inside the globe were figures of a man and a woman, and they looked like they were dancing, but the figures were not moving. "I was wondering if you could fix this for me." "The figures in the globe dance, but they haven't been dancing since yesterday," said Megan as she pushed the globe towards Quinn. Quinn nodded and took the globe in his hands. "Well, either a part is broken causing the figures to stop dancing, or maybe the animation spell on it has worn down." He looked at Megan and asked, "May I use some magic on the globe?" When Megan nodded, Quinn took out his fake wand and casted a repairing charm, Reparo. The globe glowed, and the figures started dancing realistically. It turned out it was the first one, thought Quinn as he smiled and pushed the now working globe back to Megan, who was smiling in joy and relief. Thank you. My mother gave it to me on my 11th birthday. I was worried that I had broken it so quickly, Megan said as she hugged the globe, but then she once again became nervous. How much does the repair cost? Quinn smiled and answered, You don't need to pay me, Ms. Jones. Instead, you can owe me a favor in return. Rest assured, it will not be something difficult. Megan seemed confused, but then nodded, All right, if it is all right for you. I will take my leave. Quinn nodded, but called for her, Ms. Jones? Yes, she asked as she got up. Do you have my card with you? She nodded and took out the A.I.D card from her pocket, this one, right? Quinn nodded and handed her another identical card. If you see someone in need of help, please give them this card, and send them here. All right, I will. Thank you, again, said Megan before leaving the room. Quinn closed his eyes and dived into his mindscape. He found himself in a room where he kept records of all Hogwarts students. Quinn recorded everything he knew about the students here. He recorded people's likes, dislikes, friends, enemies, preferences, grades, their thoughts he chanced upon when using legilimency, and anything Quinn knew about a student, it would be here. Quinn walked to the book he had allotted to Megan Jones, and with a wave of his hand, he had the memory book of his current interaction with her. He pulled out Megan's record memory book from the shelf, and with books in both hands, he brought them close, and the moment they touched, the books combined to become one. This was one of the techniques Quinn had learned to sort his memories. He could merge memory books for better access. Finally, Quinn immersed himself in Megan's newly updated book to increase his immersion and retention of his memory of her. When Quinn came out of his mindscape, he smiled and spoke to himself, one little step closer. This marks the end of Part 7 of the story, Magical Journey in Harry Potter World. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.